appreciating music in like a crowded space for like 3 hours. You know, it's sometimes standing. Like a lot of that will leave you tired. But from the Roots, just coming away vibrating with energy and inspiration. How good it was of a live performance.
All right, welcome back, guys. Welcome to Do It Yourself Music Appreciation, the only show where two Jews and a Guyanese man discuss hip-hop music. I have a question for the listeners. Do you suffer from a condition called whack MC-itis? Does listening to a whack MC just ruin your day? Do you find yourself obsessively talking about music while other people look at you funny? If so, this is the show for you. Welcome back to a show where myself, Benny, my man Dion, and my man Gary, each week one of us picks an album that we love in hip-hop, and the three of us listen to it, reconvene, and discuss everything we love and appreciate about it. We love music so much.
Like a bunch of whack MCs.
Yeah, man. We really we go for the whack MCs only. Just kidding. Probably no human on earth is less of a whack MC than the MC in this group that we're about to discuss, Black Thought of the Roots. This week's pick was Dion's, and he picked Undun by the Roots as their 2011 album.
2011, yep.
It was their second to last album so far, right? Their last album was 2014, and then you shoot your cousin,
which is also, we'll get into that. That's another. It's their two concept albums basically back to back, Undun and then Shoot Your Cousin. It's a little hard to say, right, with the dot dots. But yeah, that was their album after that. I think they had a couple after that though. No.
I think And Then You Shoot Your Cousin was their final album so far, and I believe How I Got Over might be somewhat of a concept album too. I'm not sure. But at any rate, this was absolutely a concept album, which was interesting. Dion, you picked it. Mm-hmm. I heard this album once before this week, and I'm a huge fan of the Roots music. I guess I stopped at Rising Down. I listened to that album a lot, and then everything that was released after that, I just I listened to it once or twice, and I'm a creature of habit. I go back to what I know and love. So this week was pretty cool for me, man. I didn't even realize it was a concept album until you told me.
Yeah.
I think it could be just because the story element of it is more about the backwards progression, I guess we'll call it. You know what I mean? It's a story told backwards. It starts with the end of someone's life and then kind of watching the chapters in reverse. But tell me if you guys agree or disagree. Most other story music in hip hop, the lyrics are way more descriptive about what's happening. It's like, like for instance, Get Off My Block, or The Things We Do for Money by Busta Rhymes, and then he pulled out the gun, and then I grabbed the gun, and then he shot me, and then I screamed. You know what I mean? There's like all this, these story beats to the, story music in hip hop. Whereas this was more emotional beats and like takes on what life is like during these chapters rather than instances and scenes.
It's more mental, really. Like,
right.
It's like a mental story. Whereas, like, again, going back to Busta Rhymes, to a song like "Get Off My Block," that's more of like, it's like physical and practical. Like that. Like I'm telling a story of what's happening. In this case, this is more of like an overall story throughout the whole album, and a lot of it's like you said, like a lot of it is just like sort of what's going through this character's head as he's driving towards death, apparently.
Right.
Yeah, I thought the Busta Rhymes. Yeah. Well, yeah, right. Very, very obviously driving toward death. As was made,
abundantly clear.
Yeah.
From the beginning of the album.
Throughout all these years listening to this album, and especially going into this listen here, I kind of like, abstractly and sort of on a macro level thought that this was like, yeah, I'm sorry, I always knew it was a story told in reverse. But I always thought that it was, a life story universe. It started with a death and, somehow at the end, and I guess I equated that sort of musical interlude at the end with what's called the Redford Suite. And the character, by the way, is named Redford Stevens. The character of this album. I thought just on the surface level that maybe that instrumentals, that was like the birth and this is going through his life. But in actuality, if you really take a listen to it, it's supposed to, I believe, take place in one day. Like the beginning of the song, like the flat line they hear, like that's the ultimate, like the end, like the actual death. And I think if you go towards the end of the album, like it's like him like waking up. This is like a day where it's like, all right, another bleak day, another shit. Like like am I gonna die today? Am I gonna kill myself? Am I gonna get shot? And then like each song, it's like there's one song that's talking about the general glories he had in his criminal life. Another song that's like sort of a flashback. Like the second to last song, the second song in the album is kind of like a dark flashback to the bad things in his life. The very next song is a light flashback to all the good things in his criminal's life. And it's like different like elements of this criminal's life, but it all starts with him, sort of contemplating on a day. It's like, all right, is this the day I'm gonna die? Like I'm like this is crushing. This is like I'm drowning in this shit. And it ends with his death. But this open to interpretation. But this is like
Yeah, I mean, I didn't read too much annotation.
Sure.
So I found it hard to follow in the same way I was listening to it, I'm going, well, how far back is each song going? Because it's not this linear thing that you could follow.
Right.
It's more about states of mind and reflection. Like there's one song where he's reflecting about like no one's gonna he's like a criminal on top of the world. No one's gonna fuck with him. And then on another song is how it almost there's one song. I remember.
Yeah.
Where it just kind of felt like he was reflecting on just darkness or like maybe abuse. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so it makes more sense to put it into that context now that this is the thoughts going through a man's head in reverse on the day that he dies.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what they're sort of
got it.
Hey, Gary, you started with your thoughts. I kind of want you to continue. Like now that you, and again, I'm not saying this is what you should think, because you could hear what I just said or what me and Ben were just talking about and still have the opinion like, no, I don't think it's a day. So I'm kind of curious to know what your interpretation is now, especially hearing like sort of our thoughts on it.
Oh man, this is one of those rare situations where we're all right. I mean, I love that shit. Isn't that almost impossible? It's not. It's win-win in that these reflections are from points in Redford's life, the character Redford that they created for this album, and but he's maybe having these reflections, almost like he's like listening to this album or something, or it's flashing through his mind, and could be one day or the moment of his death or something like that. But they are kind of stakes in time and reflection of a mindset. This album is really cool for that reason. I still don't understand though why they had to do it backwards. I found that to be a task, because in order to truly listen to this album and enjoy it, at least from my perspective, because I listened to it straight through maybe 2-3 times, right, from beginning to end, and really enjoyed it in a different way. But I think since they are telling a story backwards, to like righteously enjoy it, you have to take the time to like find a way in Spotify to not have the one song go on to the next, and to actually listen to one song at a time from the very last song, which is the beginning, through to the end. I tried to do that, and given that we're doing this project, I could actually allocate that time in good conscience to do something that's kind of painstaking like that. But I got a whole different experience after doing.
I didn't even try that, man.
Dion, did you get to do something as
listen to it like
as
in
obsessive
reverse?
as that? Yeah.
Like actually, actually, I did not.
It's a great idea, man.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't think of that.
I mean, I think probably intended to in some way, but then maybe somebody had this idea, and somebody else in the band is like, who's going to do that? Like 1% of people listening to this album or less, and they probably are doing a podcast. That's the only way. but let me tell you my reflection.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like,
perspective.
Yeah, what do you think
on this
of it?
point that we're just talking about?
Sure.
I thought it was 3 eras in his life that he's reflecting on, and the Redford Suite, Dion, as you mentioned at the end, represents the very beginning of life, and maybe just the very like flowering of consciousness in a person, where it's like chaotic thoughts. It's a little bit of like, oh,
Right.
go ahead, man.
I wanted to ask you about that, Gary. Now that you're on this suite,
Yeah,
and I want you to keep going. But so I'm sure, as we all listen to this album a bunch, you notice in this suite there's a extended section of extremely, let's call it avant-garde
chaos
out music, right?
Yeah.
The definition of out music, the notes that are not in sync or in tune with each other, just chaos. What part of his life do you think that represents?
To me, that represented the very beginning of like when you're a baby. I'm thinking baby probably because my cousin Jenna just had a new baby.
Oh, nice! Congratulations.
Yeah, man. Thanks. I'm psyched for them. So they when you have a baby that's just born and you have no context to put thoughts together, you're just experiencing sensory experiences, right? That probably, in my mind, looks like bebop. Right? It's
free
jazz, right? You're like maybe in the basement of Smalls, like 2 a.m. right before they ban smoking indoors. It's that's where it puts me, and it's also it's that kind of music. That was cool.
That's interesting. Sorry, go on, Gary.
Right, so I'll just quickly wrap up this thought.
No.
I thought it was 3 phases. It's being a pre-speech like baby or toddler, and then it's being a kind of a conscious human being, like maybe a young teenager, right, where you just kind of know this is what Redford means as a name, this is who I am, kind of like here are the tips of my fingers, right, grounding yourself, like you're there. A cohesive thought, maybe like you could articulate and move through life and start to be an adult. And then there's him as an adult, kind of reflecting on the ups and downs of like being a urban living Philadelphia poor person of color, probably, right? This character was a composite of a bunch of people that the band knew growing up in Philadelphia.
By the way, on that, because I'm assuming you guys probably read the same things I did. Did you see what one of the main influences for this character is too?
I did very little reading this week.
Black Thought said that in addition to Gary, you're absolutely right. This is a composite figure from a lot of people that they grew up with in Philly. But he also said that one Avon Barksdale was also a big influence for this Redford character. A person who's like in their 30s, a black man in America in their 30s who is, let's face it, is a criminal turned to a life of crime and thuggery, but isn't necessarily like a stupid person. Like this is a person that has potential and intelligence, but like a lot of other people in that situation find themselves on sort of the wrong side of things in life. And in Avon's case, it ended up with spoiler alert if you haven't watched The Wire, Avon eventually spends the rest of his life in jail, or it's implied, based on his criminal behavior and activity and like lifestyle. And in Redford's case, it ended up in his death. The question is how he got to that death, but we'll get back to that. Gary, I kind of want you to finish what you were saying with the 3 phases, because I think that's really, really interesting, and I have a take on that myself.
I think that was kind of the thought, man. It's very early childhood to young adulthood, just starting to make his way through the world and experiencing some crazy and really sad stuff along the way. And
incredibly sad.
Then getting over that hump, you're past it. Something happened. There's some untold part of the story, but then he's an adult. He's talking about the grind of doing this kind of criminal activity, and also the upside and the fact that it's so fleeting. I think that's the 3 phases.
One interjection is I love that take on it, Gary. But now again, like I did very little reading, right? I know that it was about a character named Redford. I wanted it to be just what comes into my ears and then what my mind experiences.
And I'm happy that you did that. And I wanted your take as someone who didn't do as much reading. I'm actually happy you did that. I want to hear your thoughts.
So the suite, I took it as the beginning of life as well. But the moment the suite, if I'm unclear if the suite is told, like, let's say that just that end, let's call it the epilogue of the album, right? But like that end suite, if time is reversed back to normal.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Because that's the experience I got from it, like starting out as a child, and then I think the moments of out jazz, like complete dissonance, I look at that as like the trauma that someone might experience as a child. You know what I mean? Like that's what I took it as. Like, so you're starting off as just like an oblivious child, and then trauma hits. Maybe this trauma might lead a man to walk down a certain path that, had that trauma not existed, a different path might be taken. That's how I took it.
I think there's a way we could all be right still. Here's how. So the last track, because I did do some reading this time, unlike usually I am I would say unintentionally unprepared. Like there's a little bit of a feeling getting into a conversation with you two, like, fuck, I didn't do my homework.
You did more than me this week.
Right? Yeah, so for a change, I actually did some homework. The last song is called what? Finality or something? Or,
yep.
Yeah. So, and if that represents the very beginning of somebody's life, then there's an obvious reference to like predetermination. So if you're listening to these Redfield suite tracks as a kind of foreshadowing of the entire life of a person, then those ideas connect too.
That's interesting. Yeah. So for me,
almost like, so sorry, Gary. It's almost like if you watch an old movie or listen to a classical piece, the movements in the beginning, what do you call it? It's like they play the themes that you're going to hear throughout the. What do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's called a 1990s movie preview, right? Where
Yo,
they just
come
show
on,
you the
man.
whole movie, but shrunk down like 60 times. They just shrink it. It's like, here's the whole movie. Here's the entire arc of the movie.
Well, at any rate, I know, like, so Rush, they released 2112, and then there's like the 2112. It's not
the overture.
The overture.
Yeah.
There you go. So Doom did that too on the Victor Vaughn album. So I think maybe this epilogue is actually the overture of themes.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That sums up. So here's my interpretation of those last four tracks. I do agree, Gary. I forget either Gary or Ben or both of you said this, but I do agree that it is definitely told linear. Like this is now the whole story in chronological order, basically. The way I went for it, like I kind of went a little deeper. Like the first one, Redford, which in parentheses is like for Yaya and Papa. It's Greek for grandpa and grandfather. And Sufjan Stevens, who arranged this song. It's actually from a Sufjan Stevens song. Do you guys know Sufjan Stevens? Yeah. So he had to do with this. It's get this, it's gonna blow your mind. The character of Redford Stevens is Sufjan Stevens' character. That appeared in an album of his called Michigan. And this exact song, Redford, for Yaya and Papa, was in that album, and essentially he collaborated with the Roots, and I think like sort of developed this character for this album.
Seriously, what the hell? That's amazing.
This track, like this instrumental, the sad instrumental, like four note track, is on a Sufjan Stevens song, and he's credited as producing this track. I think they did a slightly different string arrangement for this version, but it's virtually the same thing.
Do you know when this Sufjan project took place? Was Undun like a decision, like let's make an album based on this, or was it done in conjunction?
I believe the Sufjan stuff came first.
Like,
if I'm not
it has
mistaken.
to have been way earlier, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about how old is Sufjan Stevens? Like, how long has he been around? I've always known that name, but I don't know much about the artist at all. Ben, you know?
I don't want to talk out of my ass. I don't fucking know, man.
No, that's fine. It's
72.
It's from an album from 2003. So his album definitely came first, and he collaborated with the Roots. So
amazing.
The way I interpret, again, going back to this, the way I interpret the last four songs, Redford, and I'm using the translation, the grandma and grandpa. It's like that's like the beauty of life sort of starting. This is like, and it's for grandma and grandpa because like, look, like, you know, I brought you a grandchild into this life. This is a beautiful moment, you know, and that's kind of sort of like the calm before the storm, right? Then Possibility, perfectly arranged, obviously more complex musical arrangement than the first one. But it's great, it's beautiful, it's almost like what could have been. Like literally, I'm paying attention to the titles too, and I'm trying to interpret it that way. So it's like what could this life be? Like everyone starts with a blank slate, right? And that's sort of where that first track is. This one is like, all right, what could life possibly be? It could be beautiful, it could be beautifully arranged. Willpower goes right, it's like the transition from track to track is one of those seamless ones. And eventually it starts going into that, Ben, like what you said, that like sort of chaotic avant-garde, like, and to me that's like, all right, well, now we know what could have been, now here's what's actually gonna happen. This shit is broken, control is lost, like your life is spiraling, and you're basically like you're on a path towards death. And then Finality comes back to that same sort of arrangement of Possibility, where it's like, all right, well, now you're past the point of no return, you've already fucked yourself over, so now we're just gonna sort of do this life cycle thing where we're bringing the music back to where it originally was. And it ends, if you notice, Finality, the last thing that you hear is just a crashing piano tone. And to me, that's like, there you go. There's the moment of death. And if you keep playing it to the very end and immediately play the first track in this album, Done, the very first thing you hear on in your ears is what I interpret as a baby crying. Just like a immediate baby crying as soon as they're born. And then immediately after that, you hear the flatline. And that's the death. Again, this is, and I think that's sort of the point of this album, right? Or any sort of concept album, or there's going to be some abstract sort of thoughts to this. So this could just be my interpretation, and I could be wrong, and I could be right. I don't know, but that's sort of how I interpreted it. And then ultimately, the last four tracks, like what it did is it kind of like it made the entire album, which is already pretty sad. It's a sad take on a person's life. And it make you're listening to the music, and it's so good and it's so rich, like it almost makes you tear up. Like I'm gonna be honest, like listening to this music after hearing the album I just heard, and after hearing listening to the tragedy of this guy's life, and then hearing this instrumental just beauty. There's a point where it's like, wow, this is really, really sad. I mean, the way, I mean, this is the fact that the music can like sort of bring out this emotion in you. Like, this is a really good album. That's I guess what I'm getting at. This album is incredible.
It was like for me, as someone who, I think of the three of us, I'm by far the most picky and downright snobby music head. Right? Like, I love what I love, and I fucking hate what I hate, and I hate a lot, and I get it. Like, that's who I am at my core. I don't think that's going to change. I'm never just going to be like, yeah, I can listen to this even though I don't love it. Like I'm just not that guy. You know what I mean? So, like, this experience of listening to Undun now, I the first time I heard it, my head was in other places. I don't really remember it. So listening to it now, it was like this... I felt blessed. I felt like, wow, the world is blessed to have hip-hop artists who care as much as the Roots care about giving you art and giving you something to, think about, and something that might actually make you rethink what you thought about, and something that is so far beyond an anthem or a street banger or a club hit or bars, right? I think that's such an incredible thing about this album in particular, is that you have the main voice on this album as someone who is literally one of the greatest lyricists and MCs in the history of hip-hop, one of the greatest lyricists in the history of music. Genius, Black Thought, right? You have that level of skill level and talent, and he's so much... The word I think about is humility, because this could have been bars, right? This even with the same music in the background, Black Thought could have flexed in ways we've all heard him flex, but he knew the project came first. The story and the experience of this project was not about his bars. There's very few moments of lyrical dexterity that you're like, whoa, did you hear that shit? They're there.
Yeah.
But not in ways that other Roots albums have, and not in ways that his excellent solo releases have. This was not a lyrical showcase in the way that some of his other projects are. This was more of an experience that he humbly helped cultivate. And I just admire that so much. When you have the talent to be the star, yet you know that the story and the experience of the collective album is the star, not you.
It's similar to Igor, like what Tyler did. It's very very similar. Where it's like,
This is a little more lyrical than Igor, but
a little bit,
sure.
but similar in that like both of these guys and
It's a lot more
not,
words.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not comparing the two, but both of them are lyrical giants in their own right, and both sort of put that on the back burner. In Tyler's case, he straight up said it was his third highest priority. Second to beats and composition. And same thing with this. It's like, clearly, lyricism took a backseat for the overall concept, and the overall sort of execution of the album. It's really respectable. And it's kind of
totally.
Lyricism
was not like lyricism wasn't the star. It was another tool to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. I guess that's why they called it a concept album, right? Mm-hmm. They had a goal where they needed to articulate a story and maybe a philosophy on predetermination and destiny, maybe.
Right.
But definitely they used it effectively to articulate a story.
Absolutely. And that's, man.
But why did they make it backwards?
I think with the backwards thing, I was thinking about that, and to go back to another thing on The Wire, and this is a thought that I had. If you remember, and again, audience, if I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you've probably seen The Wire, or
if you haven't seen The Wire, shame on you.
Like, if you haven't seen The Wire, just don't.
Couch on the maybe you watched The Wire on the couch next to Dion and Ben.
Yeah, exactly.
It's possible.
Just don't mute for the next couple of minutes, I guess. But one of the most popular characters on The Wire, and one of the most popular characters in television history, really, Omar Little. His death in season 5. If you remember, the last time you see him, he's in the morgue. He's got the toe tag on, and the coroner just happens to casually notice that that toe tag is wrong. It's he switched it out. Then you also see like a little blurb on the newspaper, like local thug gunned down in supermarket in bodega or whatever. And the point of that was like, look, at the end of the day, for example, all that coroner is seeing, or all the person reading the newspaper is just seeing, hey, just some thug died. They don't know that this dude was a street legend, right? A street legend. But all that doesn't really matter when you're dealing with people who don't know who you are. All they see you is as a corpse, and at that point you're just a number. I think that maybe that's sort of similar. Like, that's kind of what the Roots are trying to do with this. It's like take you from that point. And like, no. Like, this wasn't just some nobody. In his right and among his friends and his family, he was a somebody. So now let's start with that moment where you're usually going to go forward and like forget about this person. Instead, we're going to go backwards and see what this person was like. Maybe.
And if you look at cinema, this has happened in cinema,
sure,
right? So
Carlito's Way.
Right?
Yeah.
Carlito's Way starts at his death. But the difference here would be that Carlito's Way starts at his death and then starts at the beginning leading. You know what I mean? It starts at the end and then it starts at the beginning right after.
Right.
Yeah, right. It was a cheesy 90s movie.
Memento.
Memento was a story told backwards. And man, that was done very well. That
Excellent.
was different. It was different, obviously. So there's precedent for it in storytelling. I wouldn't even call it a complaint. The challenge of this story was it was hard to follow because there was no narrative and it was only states of mind, and because my take on it was every featured artist didn't play another character. I think they just contributed to Redford.
Yeah, that was interesting. It wasn't bad. It was good. It was good. It was really good. But you're right.
There was
Agreed.
no conflict. There was no,
Right.
all of the featured artists, I just think were other parts of Redford's mind, maybe. Because there really wasn't any interaction, conflict, or reference to each other.
Not really, but they
that
all... Go ahead, Gary.
It was something that I'm sure the band had set as a kind of premise of the project, right? It's not... it wasn't like a, hey, bring some bars... and maybe these are bars that you wrote for another project that didn't use, whatever. It's like, no, we're gonna write for the purpose of telling this story. I think that
from
was
one
a
man's
shared
perspective. Yeah, yeah, for
and
sure.
I would say, Ben, you're right. Obviously, like, they're not going back to them playing the same character, and it's not like obvious that that's what they're doing. But the things that they're talking about are within theme for those songs, and those songs
100%.
are within theme for the character.
And it took a few listens to grasp that and the themes. And so that's really the challenge was to follow a narrative that had no narration. You know what I mean? That that was a challenge, especially with none of the supplementary material that I know they provided. I found out while doing a little research that they provided videos and supplementary reading and all this other media to go along with it when it was dropped. Yeah.
Look at that.
And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to experience it as an album. I'm not going to go search out these materials or even other hip hop scholars' annotations of it. Like, I want my own experience. And it was a great experience. I think that one thing that has to be mentioned is the music.
Yeah.
I mean, if
any Roots album, really, but especially this
any
one.
any Roots album. I mean, what you have here is a collection of musicians, right? Just remove Black Thought and the other MCs and some of the guest spots were pretty dope. I thought Fonte was just fire. Big Crit too. Anyway, you have a drummer who is just like the very definition of groove. Like, he's just knows how to make a drum, like a live drum beat that sounds like a hip hop break beat, and the grooves that he creates are spectacular.
This is the reason why he's one of the greatest musicians of our generation. I mean,
so incredible, so incredible, and to, you know, I think at this point he and Questlove, the drummer, and Black Thought are the only two original members still.
I think so, because Hub is gone.
Leonard Hubbard's gone. You know, Malik left the group officially after Things Fall Apart, and then you know he had guest appearances after that. But,
and of course we were missed to say rest in peace to Malik B, who just passed away at this point. As a point of this recording, about a week or so ago.
I wanted to get into that a little later because I was going to bring up my favorite Roots album that he's on. But yes, rest in peace, Malik. You legend. The world lost such a talented artist. He was the perfect, in my opinion, the perfect partner for Black Thought. Just they, you know, a little more street, a little more rugged, a little more aggressive, but both of them had a funk and a delivery and interesting flow patterns, and they were just such a fine partnership, and he will be missed sorely. It hit me hard when I found out he passed. Rest in peace.
We saw him in concert, huh?
I don't know if we ever saw him with Malik B in concert.
I think the first time we as a group saw them was on the Phrenology tour.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That was after he officially left. I don't know if he was there. Yeah. I can't say for sure. I was pretty fucking blunted that night.
As we all were. Anyway, going back to it.
Yeah, so I just want to say the music on this album was spectacular. The compositions, I think my favorite track might have been the one after the Flatline. I don't know the title, but the first musical track. Sleep. I thought that was Black Thought singing, but it's not. You know, starts with singing and then Black Thought's quick verse. It's a short song, but the verse is so powerful and the music under it is haunting, but funky. You know what I mean? Like, bum, 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 bum. Like, just like powerful, hits you right where you need to be hit. That's such an important part of hip hop to me. Like, have the music underneath the words interesting. Don't make it sound like everything else. Make it interesting.
Make it be part of the story. Make it be part of the narrative. And this song is the one I mentioned before. Like, this is the flashback of the batshit in his death, or in his life. This is the moment before, right before he flatlines. Like, this is the last moment he has. It's like the
here I go. When he goes, here I go from a man to a memory. I wonder if my fam will remember me. Oof.
Yeah.
Powerful, man. Really. So. Just can't say enough about the music on this album. And listen, let's be honest, okay? Or let's just say I don't want to call it the elephant in the room, but what separates the Roots from almost every other hip hop act in the world? They are elephants. They are elephants. No, they are not elephants. They are a band. And they are a band of excellent musicians. And while there's been a rotating cast of musicians throughout their years, they've added some permanent members at this point. Captain Kirk,
Frankie Knuckles,
since Phrenology. I don't. Yeah, I mean, my favorite era was when Leonard Hubbard was the bassist.
Absolutely.
And when it was a more stripped down sound. But I'd like to get into that soon because I feel like this album, while it evokes so much emotion in me, I'd be remiss not to just talk about the achievements of the Roots and like what makes them so special. And I think we should spend some time on that.
Benny, can I introduce that with a conversation about their live performance?
Yes.
That's where we were going with it, baby. Go.
Figured. I just wanted to trip you. You know,
That's
it. It was a sweep. So I haven't seen that much live music, but I've seen the Roots with you guys 3 or 4 times, and I say 3 or 4 for the reason that you mentioned, Benny. I don't know if it's 3 or 4, but the experience every time left me inspired, pumped, like getting out of a show. Like, you know, sometimes it's exhausting. Like I've just, you know, been watching and appreciating music in like a crowded space for like 3 hours. You know, it's sometimes standing. Like a lot of that will leave you tired. But from the Roots, just coming away vibrating with energy and inspiration of how good it was of a live performance. And they throw. I think like CeeLo was one of the guests.
I was gonna talk about that for a quick second. That was one of the coolest moments I've seen at a hip hop show, and it was reminiscent of we talked several weeks ago about us seeing Tribe. And Busta Rhymes came out in the middle and performed Scenario with them and stayed as their hype man. Similar to this, not as cool as that. That was the coolest thing I've ever fucking seen. But it was a Roots show at Webster Hall. It was a Roots and Talib Kweli. They were co-headlining. And the song Crazy, I believe, had just come out. The CeeLo song, mega hit. It come out like a few weeks prior. It was number one hit.
Under Gnarls Barkley.
Yes, right? Yeah, exactly. Right. He comes out in the middle of the Roots set, like in between songs, like after like the 5th song, randomly comes out from backstage, performs Crazy. Crowd goes nuts, obviously, because again, this was the hit of I think it was a summer show. This is like the hit of the summer at the time. Performs it, crowd goes nuts. He goes backstage. Roots continue their show. It was incredible. But nice. Webster Hall, one of the few good things about Webster Hall.
yeah.
There was a lot of like Webster Hall. All I could think about is like the smell of sweat and wrongdoings.
Yep. By a bunch of 15-year-olds.
Yeah, good amount of good dose of wrongdoing in that place. It was a hard place to be in. But we've gone more than once to see live music there, and I've seen the Roots probably twice there.
It's a good venue. It's a good musical venue.
You know, we are the first time we as a group saw them was at the Knitting Factory.
The old Knitting Factory, the one in Manhattan before they moved
was
to
Nate
Brooklyn.
there too?
Nate was there.
Nate?
Yep, Nate was there. Nate Fetter.
That was an experience, man. That was the loudest. I think like when they like went into this moment of like heavy metal as a band, and I remember thinking my ears would never recover.
It was such a small space. It was so cool.
It was so dope though. And Gary, so you know, the live experience is what 100% what sets them apart from any other hip hop artist, and I will say with absolute certainty, there's no better live hip hop act in the world than the Roots.
It's not even close.
Not even close. And there is no better live MC in the world than Black Thought. Not even close. Come at me, anyone, I dare you. And so
I'm not mad at that. That's good.
I personally, right, and call me a hater, I don't give a fuck. As someone who I go to a lot of shows, right? Most of the shows I go to are in hip hop, right? I go to see bands that are considered the greatest live bands in the world. I go and I've witnessed excellence, right? I witness execution. I witness improvisation. I witness rehearsal. Things that clearly took time to cultivate and rehearse to get down. like, on the dot. So too many times have I witnessed live hip hop and I went, man, that didn't do it for me. Either the MC, I think the biggest sin, and it takes place on the highest level of fame. If you are playing your song with your lyrics over, if you could hear the actual song that you recorded under you rapping over it live, then I'm sorry, you are doing something whack. And whackness, I was talking about whack MCs before. I've seen some of the most famous MCs in the world rap over themselves rapping. How could you call yourself an MC doing that? Anyway, that is such a cardinal sin for me. It's like fucking lip syncing.
Yeah,
it's like lip syncing with the mic on.
Yeah.
The live performances were also important to the Roots because before we actually started recording this, Benny, Dion and I were talking about the process of how they come up with music. And
Gary, talk about that. It's really interesting.
I was blown away by this because they must be so on point, or maybe the live experience is so core to how they make music. But before they did the Tonight Show, the main place, or so I heard, the main place that they would find the space where they would create like the kernels of new songs is when they were kind of doing their sound check. Between
that's what other bands in other genres often do.
Right.
Songs are written on the road.
It's not a hip hop thing; it's a band thing. Yeah,
right. Yeah, exactly. It's a live performance thing. It's a band thing. It's just so core to jamming is so core to how they make music, which is cool. Yeah. I think that really comes through in an album like this.
100%.
And on that note, this coming up with the sound specifically for this album, they said that a lot of it came from being the house band on the Tonight Show. As the house band, they have to come up with like these tiny short little clips every night. Yep. They said they have to come up with like 3 to 7 songs every single night. Obviously, not even close to all of them get used. So what they did is they just sort of kept them in the library, and a lot of them were used for this album. So being on the Tonight Show, it kind of like was one of the catalysts for the creation of this album, which I thought was amazing. It's funny because and not that I thought this, but when you found out that they were becoming the house band for the Tonight Show, that's another elephant in the room. You couldn't help but think like, oh my God, these guys sold out, right?
I honestly never thought that.
I never thought that, but I understood why, like how and why people would come to that conclusion. But I looked at it as like, no, I mean that's like that. Get your bread, like that's your livelihood. Like this is what you are. At the end of the day, you're a band, and like one of the highest, sort of. I don't know.
You know why I didn't think it was selling out, D? Because it was them being hired to be them.
Yes.
They didn't get on the Tonight Show and change their shit up. They were just playing songs. They were the hired band for any time a famous hip hop artist wanted to do a show with a live band. Guess who was behind that?
Always
Roots. The Roots.
Yeah. Jay-Z, like some of the biggest. Yeah.
They're just playing music still. This is what I would consider selling out. If they released a Roots album that had all sampled music, that would be selling out. If they released a Roots album that, or if they started doing fucking McDonald's commercials, that would be selling out. Fuck that. To me, this held all artistic integrity.
Agreed.
They're
totally
still
agreed.
being the Roots, just on Jimmy Fallon for the world at large to
exactly
see.
And that to continue my point, Gary, I'll give me 1 second, but to continue my point with the with the Roots and Jimmy Fallon, not only did they not have to sell out, like, literally sell out or compromise who they are, but again, like being on that show gave them the opportunity to do one of their most creative albums to fucking date, which is Undun. So it's incredible. Hey, Gary, you had a thought?
Yeah, it was just related to this, that my expectation was, not knowing the Roots and their music as well as I do now, which is not that well, but even worse than this, was that they would just get comfortable and not create this kind of music. There's just they're not trying to break through anymore. They're very famous. They're at some would say the height of fame. They have a really cool, steady gig as musicians night after night, keeping them very busy. Why do something like this? And it's got to come down to being just artists, and their point being to make artwork, right? That's the whole point.
I think that
speaks so highly to their integrity as artists, right? They remained artists. That's another example, exactly as you said, Gary. Like, if they became complacent and are like, you know what, we're no longer a rap group, we're a house band for the Tonight Show. That would be upsetting, to say the least. To deprive the world of the art that they've that they so consistently create. And I know their output has slowed down significantly since they joined that show, but hey, they still have put out albums in their tenure as the Tonight Show band. So yeah, no complacency there in my opinion. And so I really, really see no sellout whatsoever.
Yeah. And again,
I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah, exactly. To make it clear, I didn't think that either. All I was saying is that there were obviously people at the time when the decision and when the announcement was made that was the first thing they thought of. And like I sort of, and rightfully so, in my head I was like, no, let's give this some time. Let's see what how this shakes out. Like I bet they are going to be able to be themselves, and lo and behold, that's exactly what it turned out to be. Like they're part of, like, Black Thought is part of the show. The Questlove is part of the show. Like they're not.
And shout out to Fallon for like letting them shine a bit. In the show. Yeah, it's a recognition of the talent that's already there. So as we were getting into this live experience, right? So why are they the greatest hip hop act ever live? It's not just the main fact is that the music that's being created, right, or the music that you're hearing is not pre-recorded. There's just something about the dead air in the room when I go see a hip hop show where it's like the DJ behind them is literally, they're not even cutting up records. They're just going, okay, I'm going to push this button.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm going to mute it for a second to like let the crowd shout. But there's no interaction between the music there's no music being created. It's just music that has been created being played as a track for a person to hopefully rap well over,
and also muted and unmuted.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
exactly.
The
and to be clear, this is hip hop. We are not shitting on this. This is great. That is wonderful. That is exactly what true to form hip hop is. So this is not us saying like there's a problem with doing that. Like that's the way things are done, and that's great. We're just saying that the Roots found a way to sort of revolutionize and evolutionize. I don't even think that's a word, but you know what I mean. Hip hop in a way that like at the time we didn't think was even possible.
Well, I'll tell you what other experiences I've had where there's no band that are similar in the inspiration department. The way Gary, said he walks away inspired is when I get to witness, like for instance, Dion, right? I never watched him. I've seen videos of him rapping live. He's an incredible live MC, but I've witnessed him cut up records and make a beat before your eyes. Two vinyl records, and then in that process, cut it up live and make a break beat right in front of you. And like that, I have chills on my arm just thinking about it right now. That is an experience, right? Dion, you said that we're not shitting on hip hop. I am not shitting on hip hop, but I will stand by my statement that I've said many times. For the most part, well, it doesn't change the way I feel about artists, because some hip hop artists are my favorite artists ever. But what I will say is that their music, a lot of artists' music is best served pre-recorded in my headphones and on the radio or on the stereo. I enjoy hip hop most as it has been recorded, not live. I've been to too many live shows, right? So we talked about some cardinal sins. The worst, in my opinion, is rapping over yourself rapping. I think that's just insanely tacky and like weird, and like it makes me so I've seen one of my heroes do it. I'm not going to mention a name, but I was like, fuck, man, this is so lame. The next thing, right, is there's this, for some reason, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, almost every artist I've seen live in hip hop, almost everyone, thinks that because they're in a live setting, they have to shout very loud and aggressively songs that on record they're not shouting at all. There's a musicality to their voice that is on record, and then when you go see them live, they're literally forcefully saying it, and it's without rhythm most of the time because they're just fucking shouting it. That is like,
to me, it's an energy thing.
It's all about the energy.
I'm not making an excuse for him, but you're right.
I know that there's a lot of listen. I'm just I'm riffing off my experience, right?
Yeah.
So like if I went to see a band in any other genre, right, and they play a song that I love, right? Most of the bands I love don't play it exactly as it was played on the record. They improvise, they change it around, they put different energies and different accents in different areas. But if they just aggressively shouted this song that isn't a shouty song and like tampered with like the integrity of the song just to try to like get over a loud crowd or something like that, like I'd be like, fuck, I'm never seeing this artist again. And you know what? I've said that many times at a hip hop show. I said, okay, I saw them, never seeing them again. I've said that a lot, you know? So there's that, the shouting. And then another thing, the overuse and dependence on a hype man, right? If every other sentence you say is finished by another guy, practice more. Practice live on the mic more. Please.
I think that one I actually disagree with you on. I understand, but it adds an element to the show. Like it makes it. Like it literally
if they are rehearsed, but most of the time, the hype man doesn't know when you're gonna stop. It's this like thing he's trying to keep up. He's trying to keep up with your lack of breath.
I see what you're saying.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
Go listen, all listeners. Please listen to The Roots Come Alive. Okay. Just the fact that they released a live album is so rare in hip-hop. Very few artists have released a live album in hip-hop. There are some. There's an excellent live Mr. Lif album called Live from the Middle East. He's great live. I think
the 30-30. There's a 30.
It's a bootleg, but it was.
I thought that was an official. I thought it was official live.
Bootleg. At any rate,
got me.
You know, listen to what Black Thought does on the mic. We've experienced it live, but so yeah, is he spot on exactly how he sounds on the record? No, but he's not.
It's very close. But he's very fucking close.
It's not even, in my opinion, it's not close, but it's great. It's musical. It's incredible. You could hear every word.
Yeah,
he's not shouting it. There's a rhythm. There's a flow. If he alters it, it's an intentional alteration to be creative in the moment.
That's what I meant by close. I just meant you could clearly understand what he said. Like, you know, the lyrics you can clearly
mastery.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, exactly.
It's mastery on the microphone. And so what it comes down to, in my opinion, is that a lot of artists go on tour because they make a lot of money selling tickets, but they don't rehearse. It just doesn't seem like they've rehearsed what they're going to do. It's not a routine. It's just, all right, throw this record on. I'm probably not going to finish the song. That's another thing I can't understand it. Why do you're playing for an hour and a half, yet you only do the first verse of every song. So what, so you could get all the songs in? I'd rather you play half the amount of songs, maybe not the one I wanted to hear, but I want to hear the fucking song.
Yeah,
but that's also another hip hop thing, man. Like it's like the radio. Like this is like it's like I don't know. At the end of the day, like a lot of people going to hip hop shows they're going to hear the music, but they're also going to party, right? And like if you want to party, like you want to hear it in kind of like a medley kind of tone.
Exactly.
Like at the end of the day, Ben, I understand your frustrations. I get it, man. I get it.
I just
but
don't
you have
fuck
to
with
understand
it.
where
when we saw Wu-Tang, when we saw Wu-Tang, they cut off so many songs that I'm like, fuck. What the fuck, man?
But it kept the flow and it kept the energy. You know?
Yo, Jizz's verse is next. What are you... you cut off Deck's verse? What the fuck are you guys doing?
Like, you're preoccupying yourself with that and you're not allowing yourself to enjoy the fucking show. Like,
because you came into it with the wrong expectations, man.
Yeah.
I want to see, you know what?
No,
I disagree. I love you. You're my friend. I'm going to make this assessment and say that you came in there with music appreciation kind of expectation. You wanted to feel like what you experienced.
I expect my money I expect my money to be like, so that's just one thing that's a pet peeve. But I expect if I'm paying $30, $40, $50, $60, $70 to go see a show, I expect the artist to perform in a way that is that the art comes first. They're not doing that, in my opinion.
Well,
a lot of hip hop shows. It's a different
switch, though, Benny.
It's not about the art. It's about, you guys know this song? Let's rap. We're gonna give you a minute and a half. We're gonna give you a minute and a half of this one, man.
That's hip hop. How do you think all these versus battles are going? This is what people want. This is what the hip hop audience wants. I understand your frustration.
It ain't what I want, man.
Yeah,
it ain't what I want.
Then you're not gonna give them your $50 anymore. Like as simple as that.
Damn fucking straight, I won't. You damn straight, I will not. Yo,
if you're
but you go see the Roots, guarantee you the Roots, right? They're not going to do any of what I just mentioned.
No.
That is why.
That's why they're the outlier.
They are the and that's why, tell me if I'm wrong, that is why they are the best.
At doing this live shit. At doing this live show. Sure.
So,
as live performers.
if the Roots are the greatest live performers, because if they are the best, top of the mountaintop, because they don't do any of that shit, and they're well rehearsed, and the experience of hearing Black Thought's vocals are just so superior to everyone else's because he's so rehearsed live. If they're the best, then that means for not doing those things, then my pet peeves are at least valid in some way.
They're valid, but
They're
like
valid.
you're also like it feels like you're expecting that from every artist, and you're not. It's not realistic. That's not hip hop.
There are different definitions of greatness, right? This is one definition of greatness that I could relate to, right? Just going and appreciating music and getting a different take on the music from the musicians, improvised, right? Using the same secret sauce. Very cool. That's one possible definition of success. But there's a spectrum here of like, it's not just a gradient from good to bad. Some people go to concerts for mosh pits. If there's no mosh pit, it's not a good concert, right?
Like, what the fuck did I spend $100 for? I didn't even get to mosh, bro.
That's right. This mosh pit, there was no elbows. It was just all soft.
Yeah.
Like, forget it, bad mosh pit, right? Where are my elbows? That's what I pay for it. And like, some people go to raves, right? And that's like a concert too. You go to an electronic music concert, and there might be the actual musician improvising up there, like sometimes like what Don might do, but like sometimes it's maybe the musician's not even there, and it's just here's like a stand-in pressing play and mute. Who knows? but it's what the people that follow that experience are trying for. That's their definition.
Right.
100%. And I'm not if I want to be clear, if you go to that same show that I'm like, man, all of my pet peeves just happened and I did not enjoy that, right? If you went there and were like, man, they played all the hits, like that was great.
Yeah,
all of them,
you know what I mean? Like all of them. I got to hear a little bit of every single song, and I loved it. I don't judge you. I'm not going, man, fuck you. You're an idiot. You don't know what I know. I'm not saying that, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying I've witnessed things that, Roots included, I've witnessed things live, and I go, holy fucking shit, man. This was a sight to behold. I am so lucky to have witnessed this art be created in front of me. That's what I want to get my money's worth. And I've been to too many hip hop shows where myself, the snob that I am, walked away feeling I got shortchanged. Now, so we talked about Black Thought's skill level live. I believe it stems from, and this will even translate to his more recent releases where he's not rhyming with a band. I mean, Streams of Thought are sampled music, and they're so good.
Oh my god,
Gary, I don't know if you've heard his solo albums, but they're just like Mike Mastery. He is just one of the illest ever. Argument for GOAT spot for sure. But I think the reason he's so damn comfortable in his flow and his pockets are so spot on and musical and just like next level pockets and like comfort in rocking to the beat, I think it comes from practicing with a live drummer where, because he when you're practicing with a band, you are now another instrument in the created
in the collective
art. Whereas if you have a pre-rendered track, that snare and that kick and that hi-hat are always going to be sequenced in a way that they hit exactly where they hit last time. And I think the practicing with a live drummer sharpened his sword in a way that most MCs don't get to get their sword sharpened. You know what I mean? You become more of a musician in your rhyming than just a vocalist. And I think that really is what separates Black Thought from everyone else. I think that's why he could do it well.
It's obvious. I didn't think of that before, but it is pretty obvious, right? That's got to be it. That's got at least part of it, right?
Can we talk about the experience of hearing Black Thought in concert a little bit? I could tell it from my perspective as when we were going to see the Roots, it was you guys saying, yo, you want to go see the Roots? Because you probably had a conversation already, like, oh shit, I'm so excited to see this. They maybe just released this album. How often are they doing this?
Yeah.
Right. And, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll go see a band. So I'm showing up and like, all like our friends are there. Probably Alex is there. Maybe Vlad is there. I don't know. Like I said, we saw the Roots 3 or 4 times together. 3 or 4. Who knows? So, getting in is like, it's just a lot. It's a lot. The experience is a lot. It's New York. Maybe it's the winter. You're standing with your puffy coat outside of Webster Hall wrapping around. It's like not particularly well lit. Nobody looks real happy to be there. It's a long line and it's slow. And then there's some guy rough handling you in, checking you kind of halfway for I don't know what, weapons.
Dangerously
right?
close to your balls.
Yeah, they get real close, right? And then you think, you get in, you're like, do I really want to check my coat here? My coat, anything that's in it, do I really want it? You do.
I'm really glad they missed the sack of weed in my shirt collar tucked in my stash pocket in my Chad Muska skate shoes.
Oh my God. Remember those?
Chad was a forward-thinking dude.
Yes, he was.
So anyway, the music starts, and I'm blown away by how well planned it is, right? Like, it's just excellent execution on stage. Like, this band really has their shit together, and it sounds amazing. And I didn't know any of the songs, or very few of them. And anyway, it was one of those experiences where, for me, if I don't know the songs, if I don't know the lyrics or what they're about, it's entirely about the feeling of it and how good the music sounds and whether I want to dance. And in fact, Webster Hall, just thinking about that time, was like a good place for, you could dance. Yeah. You could step out of the core crowd and you could dance. That's a really good thing about that. Probably the only good thing about that venue, because after you do dance, you're like, damn, why is the water so expensive?
And brown.
Water is super expensive here. People are just drinking a lot of water here. I'm looking around at the crowd, and it's like the most diverse New York crowd ever. There are people that you would not be expecting to be in a room where there's actually like a visible cloud like in front of you of pot smoke indoors. I loved going to those shows with you. It made you like when you mentioned, Dion, that you want to listen to this album, this was your recommendation for the week. I'm like, oh, okay. And when I heard it, I'm like, wait a second, I've never heard any of these songs before. This is the first time I'm hearing any of this, and it was, I think, one of the best things I've ever heard. Like right away, I don't know if did I text you guys and say that? Like,
this
is one of the best things I've ever heard.
Yeah, and I could say that probably about almost all of their albums. Like, this is one of the best things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
What's your favorite, Dion? What's your I'll say top 3 Roots albums, because I know that mine off the top of my head.
Top 3, I would probably say Do You Want More, for sure.
The illest, for sure.
Tipping Point, which is not on a lot of people's favorites list, but
it's
it's one of my favorites. And I'd probably go back and forth between this one and then Shoot Your Cousin.
Really? Okay. Wow.
As favorites. Now that being said, they're all amazing. Ill of Half-Life.
100%.
Ill of Half-Life is probably the best one that I've ever put out. But in terms of my favorites, like me listening, yes. Do You Want More, Tipping Point, and in between the 2 concept albums, I don't count Roots Come Alive because it's a live album. It's
never
great,
count the live album, even when even when it's not a rap group, right? If there's a live album, it doesn't count in the conversation. It could be amazing, but it's not one of their albums.
It's one of the best things they've ever put out. It might be the single best thing overall that they've ever put out because whereas Ill of Half-Life is like, yes, a studio album, but it's incredible. But what they also really shine at is the live performance, and that's what Come Alive does.
And I'm gonna take you one further there, okay? I'm sorry. I know you guys fucking hate when I do this shit, when I complain so much, but
hate it.
Hate.
No, wait. I want you to actually keep an open mind.
All right.
I'm gonna propose a thought to you, okay? Roots Come Alive is so incredible, right? Because if you take away the experience of being there and the visuals and the energy of being there live, just the audio representation of what took place is incredible, right? The band is tight and Black Thought rocks. You could tell how spot on he is, how engaged the crowd is. It was recorded on their 98-99 tour, I believe. And it's just it works so well because just the audio capture is so beautiful. Now think about another show that you've been to, right? Take away the experience of being there live. Take away the energy you felt in that room. But if you just were listening to the audio of what transpired, would you want to listen to it?
You know, it's interesting. It depends. It depends on the show. Depends on the artist. Like I could say that about Tyler shows, and the reason I could say that about Tyler shows is because I often would like record like little snippets with my phone of some of the songs, some of the performances in those shows. We all do that sometimes. We get home, we're like, oh, that sounds like shit. I don't want to hear that again. But I actually find myself listening to those clips a lot for Tyler specifically. So for that artist, I would say yeah, but. Yeah, you know, you might be onto something there. Yeah,
I think you are onto something, but there's a counterpoint here where if I'm listening to like a live Wu-Tang show that's piped in, you know, directly into a recording device, right? Not
soundboard recording,
not bootleg, right? Soundboard recording.
Was Live from Montreal?
Yeah.
I don't know if they release their live shows
they have DVDs
this way or not, but if I'm listening to it in my headphones on my Discman, right, walking down the street. I don't know. If I'm allowed to elbow people like in GTA, you know, and have my mosh pit, then like, cool. Then it's worth it. Then it's an excellent listen. But it's about the mosh pit itself, right? It's not about necessarily, let me listen to the fine details of the
whole experience.
So let me ask you something, Gary.
Yeah.
Gary, let me ask you something. What if, right? And what if is a very dangerous proposition because it's just hypothetical. But what if you had that experience where the energy was there, the mosh pit was there, but the audio execution was there as well? Wouldn't that be better?
Yeah.
So that's all I'm saying. So that's all I'm saying. But
sometimes the audio doesn't have the same energy, man. Like listening to this, well, you know what? It's different with the Roots. The Roots will perform it as they intended for it to be listened to.
For sure. Part of this is an album that if they performed it live, everyone would be sitting down and paying attention. Probably.
Have they never performed this live? Is that not something they do?
They don't
I
really
could see them
tour
performing
much.
this. A lot of their songs are melancholy. You know, like this album, I think was completely melancholy, like really beautiful, really melancholy. Like Dion,
Definitely.
it was an emotional album for me too, man. And like I'm not ashamed to say that as a grown man. This thing was more. It was like, I mean, remember Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness?
Yes. That's a great album.
It was more melancholy than that.
More melancholy than the Infinite Sadness.
That's right.
You know, so I ranted a while about what I don't like, but I just want to say how much I love and appreciate the Roots live experience. Honorable mentions for excellent live hip hop shows where when we saw Prime, Royce 5'9", and DJ Premier, that was another one where I walked away inspired. Man, holy shit, Royce just did all that live. That was incredible. I thought Jizza doing Liquid Swords at Rock the Bells was incredible. Thought Slaughterhouse was great live. Great, yeah. I thought, so I'm not, but then there's other names that are in a lot of people's, even in my top 5 that I saw live, and I went, well, fuck, man, that missed the mark for me.
You know who was good? You know? Who we saw live before he became a megastar that he is now? That was really good. Big Sean. We saw him early.
He was
like
really
he
good.
Wasn't a star yet at all.
The paid dues stage at Rock the Bells.
Yeah, and then he blew up like a year later. And I remember thinking back, it's like, yo, this dude isn't like the greatest lyricist, but like that performance was great. No, and then he actually got much better. I don't know if you listened to recent Big Sean, but he got much better. He's good. He's really good.
Skills leveled up for sure. Yeah,
but but he was really good. I mean, he was young and hungry, but he was a really good live performer.
KRS-One also was an incredible tribal live experience. It was like, Black Star too. They were excellent live. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying I've had too many experiences of disappointment.
Sure.
So, this was clearly a concept album. One more thing I want to talk about with you guys, right? Is the idea of stories and concepts in hip hop. Is there anything? So I know my favorite story song ever. I'm sure Dion, it might be yours too. Is Rewind which was literally
one of my favorite. Don't know if
it's a story told backwards, but with the descriptiveness of literally vomiting vodka back into your glass. Like it's. Oh wow, my Alexa just.
We gotta keep that
in. You haven't set your Alexa to Australian voice yet?
No, I'm sorry.
Dude, come on.
Okay,
get with it.
So the story of Rewind is so descriptive and so vivid that you're literally watching in your mind a story in reverse. That's my favorite story song ever. But my favorite concept album in hip hop I think it's a tie between 36 Seasons by Ghostface. I know neither of you have listened to it, but
I've listened to it. I haven't retained it, but I've definitely listened to it.
It's different. It's kind of like a rock opera. It's different characters. Ghostface is one character. AZ is another character. Cool G Rap is another character, and they have like reoccurring roles in the album. It's very.
Yeah, I don't remember any of
good.
that. I guess I've definitely heard it like once, maybe twice, but now I need to listen to it again.
It's an unsung hero of concept albums. And Deltron 3030.
Deltron 3030.
That's my favorite. That's probably that experience of Dan the Automator's music, and just Del, like, there's a narrative, but it's mostly him just trying to rap about things that might be in the future.
Yeah.
There's ways to interpret it as a political statement, but like, really, he's like talking about upgrading your gray matter because one day it may matter. And that shit, we got to do that album one day. But yeah, man, I love. Do you guys have any concept albums that you hip hop or not, that really stick with you?
I mean, first ones that come to mind are these two for hip hop specifically. I'm trying to think if I have any other. I mean, I'll start with the storytelling songs, like Rewind by Nas, obviously in the top. I Got a Story to Tell by Biggie. And Give Me the Loot, really. Give Me the Loot is a great like visual, like,
it's a good painting.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Moment in Time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great.
But hip hop, but concept albums.
You could talk, songs too. If there's like great stories you want to, I Used to Love Her by Common. I think about.
I Used to Love Her is
that's
great.
like a concept song, which
that blew my album exactly. Blew my mind exactly once, and then I'm like, oh, I wish I figured that out sooner.
Bonnie and Clyde.
Tupac.
That's
Tupac. The original.
So
not the Eminem one.
No. The Tupac one.
Is it? One.
Doesn't the Jay-Z one take from the original? Like, am I right? Because it wasn't about his gun.
I've heard some versions spliced together. I'm not sure what I didn't realize.
Pretty sure Bonnie and Clyde found out. I'm pretty sure I'm right. Bonnie and Clyde, the original, it's about his gun. Bonnie's his gun. He's Clyde.
Get out of here.
It's great.
I didn't know that.
Go ahead, sir.
No, I was just saying that those are some of the ones that I'm keeping on top. But I guess part of the reason I'm having a hard time thinking about this, and Ben, I think you did ask us to sort of think about this before. There's not that many hip hop concept albums. There's not a ton.
There's not.
I think
Dr. Octagon.
Yep, that's a concept album.
I think they're all concept albums in that, like, a lot of not all, I think many hip-hop albums are concept albums that are on this topic because it's the invention of a character living this life of crime in a similar scenario, right? Like, a lot of, maybe a different scenario in Tupac's albums. It was very West Coast feel, but, like, in Biggie describing the life of a criminal in many ways, that's not his life. That's a character that he's making up and speaking from the perspective of. And if you think about Nas... and some of his like early work, right, 20 years ago, etc. It's telling the story of this character, Redford, in a way. It's like it's that living that same life right around the
that tragic street life.
Exactly. Right around the time like Tip the Scale, that song on this album, that era of Redford, when he's talking about just living like a kind of like super gritty, super like uncertain life where he'll do anything to just kind of make it through this phase. That's Nas's character and concept that he's communicating through his earlier work, right? It's just, this is I guess like everybody's rapping, or many rappers are rhyming along this concept of like, here's an illustration of the most like urgent and like desperately in need of like attention and fixing part of society's like failures of street life.
For sure, man. That's
interesting. And then you could even go, we were talking about Victor Vaughn. Like Victor Vaughn's like the young Doom, and like that's like that's that character. We could say there's a Redford, like you said, Gary. That's actually really well put. There's a Redford in in a lot of the albums that we've talked about. Not one, I guess, not so much Tyler with Igor. That was his own separate character. But that's a concept. That's a great concept. Yeah, exactly.
That was cool.
Mm-hmm.
That was really
man.
cool.
Also, another one. Now, this is a concept that's not a character, But one of my favorite albums of all time, and it certainly is a concept album, is Food by MF Doom. It's a fucking concept album about food, which is something that we've been talking about since we were kids. Like, we were talking about doing this, and then MF Doom fucking does it brilliantly.
Yo, I'll never forget. So I knew Food, and then I heard, I remember when you guys were living in the Leaning Tower of Park Slope. To the listeners, it was a home that was sinking foundationally, and
most homes are sinking. Come on.
And the floors were so warped that you could literally lay a tennis ball and it'll just roll quickly to the other side of the room. It was
why they call it Park Slope, man.
Yeah, man, it sloped for sure.
Exactly.
At any rate, so I remember talking about Food with Gary and Dion at that place, and like being like, "Yo, like." People think that this is the first album written all about food, but we know the guy who wrote the first album about food. What up, Rashid?
Yo.
and you know what? It was brilliantly executed. That
it was.
First album on food.
It was on Weird Al level of parody when Buffet strikes. So, you know, I guess the reason I brought that up is because you're right, Dion. They are few and far between. The idea of let's make a whole hip-hop album that feeds a theme or a narrative, right? It's a lot easier to just have a collection of beats with a collection of verses about a collection of themes. And concept albums are even rare in rock music, but they're more common than they would be in hip-hop. So I think the artists that do devote themselves to a narrative, to something to follow along with, to a reward to the active listener, you know, I got to give extra props to the Roots, to Tyler, to Del and Dan the Automator,
Cool Keith, really.
Cool Keith, like, right, like, so like when
Doom.
you can hold a theme to Doom, when you could hold a theme and elaborate on that theme and go back to beats that were told, or maybe even wrap up a story that you started a few songs earlier, stuff like that, to me, that's evidence of a very intelligent mind at work and a highly creative mind. And I just gotta shout out the Roots for doing something like this, man.
And executing well. Like, that's the thing. Like, anyone could just do it and like, oh, here, I put it together, and it's like, it sounds like shit. Everyone you just mentioned, including the Roots and specifically this album, like, it's not only is it done, it's done so well.
So well.
Like,
I mean, I'm an album guy, right? Like, we've talked about this. I am someone who I gravitate towards the artists that it's not just the hit that's great. It's when you put that album on, you don't want to make a playlist with other artists. You want to listen to that album. That album from start to finish has a lot of gems to listen to appreciate. So this album was like, this is an album. This is I just me. I wouldn't put any of these songs on randomly. I wouldn't be like, you know what? I want to hear the middle track on this album. It's just, I wouldn't do it. It's an experience like Igor, meant to be had from start to finish.
Single session if possible, too.
Single session if possible, you know, and that is what separates it from some other concepts that we've spoken about. Like, for instance, the Deltron. That's a collection of songs that take place in the year 2030, but there's not really a storyline.
Right,
you know what I mean? Whereas
and Food, same thing. Like, you could jump
totally
around. It's like
any song on that is a banger on a playlist, in my opinion. So yeah, I love that idea. And I think it's humility at the end of the day. It's talent and humility to like say, let's make something that really the greater or the sum of all of these parts is going to be the experience. Not one of us is going to have a moment that's like, yo, did you hear that metaphor? I love that I think it was Fonte referenced the Hammurabi Code.
Yeah,
that's a pretty dope historical reference, man. Took me back to social studies. I admittedly, I had to wiki it again to remind myself what the Hammurabi Code was. But, Google it, listeners. Oh, let me just say, if you dug this, if you listen to it and you love the Roots, if you haven't heard, do you want more? Please do yourself a favor. This before Black Thought, I think Black Thought hadn't become the lyricist that he would become in terms of generating ideas and literary references, and just he became a better MC as the years went on. But he is so super talented already, and it's just fun. There's so much fun. It's Black Thought and his old rhyme partner Malik B trading rhymes, collaborating with this excellent core group of musicians, funky bass, snappy, dope, funky drums, and a piano. That's really it. That's like, those are the grooves, and they're like soul, funk.
Honestly,
grooves.
If you really, really want to strip it down and hear the real stripped down version of the Roots, listen to the first album, Organics. Exactly what you just said. Like, because there's a lot more music in Do You Want More in later albums, but Organics is like, that is just raw, like hungry Roots, like
93.
Yeah.
And
Pass the Popcorn is such a cool track.
So good.
Such a cool track.
It has a track called The World's Longest Posse Cut, which
it's
like 12 minutes of just everyone rapping. It's incredible. And then Illadelph Half-Life, man, that album is spectacular. Listen to their discography. I think a forgotten album of theirs, which doesn't get enough love, is Rising Down. I remember when you guys moved from the Leaning Tower to the apartment on 8th and 8th. That's when I moved onto your couch and was a fake resident.
It's because the floor was more level there.
Yeah, I could sleep without rolling down the floor. Me and Dion would listen to Rising Down like we'd put it on every day.
It's such a good album.
Such a good album. There's a track with Styles P and Mos Def. I mean,
there's a track of Black Thought. It's literally called At 15, and it's just a verse of it free. I don't know if it's freestyle or written, but it's him at the age of 15. It just snuck in. It's great. And then it's followed by a track called 75 Bars, which is just
which you can imagine what that is.
Yeah.
The experience of listening to the Roots discography, which I did I didn't listen all the way through. I got up to the album after Tipping Point, which is, Dion, hit me with it.
Game Theory. That's Game Theory.
Game Theory. I got up to Game Theory, and it's an experience, man. You get to witness. Not only do you get to listen to Black Thought level up every single time as an MC, but you get to like listen to the interchanging or like the rotating cast of musicians to like build out these sounds, and the sounds go from my favorite era, which is Do You Want More, which is just like these rare soul grooves, and then it like builds and builds and builds, and you could like literally witness evolution. I don't know of another artist where you go down the line and you watch them evolve and like level up every time. It's really cool to listen to.
Also, another thing about it, I'm not sure if you, Ben, I think you know about this about Roots albums, Gary. I'm not sure if you know, but from the very first one, from Organics, their track listing. You know, Ben, you know about this? The track listing for Organics is 1 through, I think it has like maybe 15 tracks or whatever it is, but Do You Want More continues the track listing. So
get the fuck out of here.
You didn't know that? Yeah, no, every single Roots album, they continue the numbers. So right now,
I think I just told on myself that I never bought a Roots album. Someone burned it for me.
Yeah. So for example, like Undun, these are technically tracks 157 through 166. Actually, to 170 if you include the
That's
suite.
Incredible.
They've been doing that since Organics. Like literally, if you go back now, and I'm sure this blew your mind. Go back now to if you look at the back of every single Roots album from the very first one, it's all a continuous track numbering system.
Wow. Shout out to the OGs of the group, Black Thought and Questlove. They are the heart. I think Questlove is the heart and Black Thought is the brain. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't be the Roots if one of them left.
It's
right.
Funny,
like everyone else can change.
Yeah.
But it would not be the Roots without Questlove or Black Thought.
Why would you leave? Like, if you want to make music, if you want to make really good music, like.
But that's the thing of bands. General bands have this a lot, where like they're like rotating, cast of characters.
Like, look at Steely Dan. I mean, sorry, Gary, but Steely
Dan is one person to me.
Steely Dan is there's only two guys. It's Walter Becker and rest in I'm sorry, rest in peace, Walter Becker and Donald Fagen. And they'll still tour now with just Donald Fagen as the name Steely Dan. But all of their albums, those are really only two consistent members.
I'll do even one even better. Look at the Foo Fighters. Foo Fighters is Dave Grohl. It is just Dave Grohl. The rest of the band is a touring band. Like
the bassist has been there since
he's been there. Yes,
the start of their touring.
You're right, but like the albums when they record, at least the first few albums, it's all Dave Grohl. He's doing all the instruments.
First album, the first album.
Is it just the first?
Yeah. Yeah.
Either way, but again,
he pulled the Prince.
He pulled the Prince. Lenny Kravitz is actually the same thing. I don't think people realize that. But
Sugar Otis too, man.
Yeah, they all these people these are solo acts that they make into a band. That when they tour, they have their band. And the band, like you said, you get used to the same people, and eventually, like now the drummer for Foo Fighters, Taylor something.
Taylor Hawkins.
Yeah, he's been their drummer from quote unquote
like
the beginning.
No, anyway. I don't want to get into a pissing contest about musical knowledge.
No, this is music appreciation, baby. You know. But the point is like that's an example, Gary, of like you said, like why would you want to leave? It's like no, that's kind of just how bands go. And going back to our point of the Roots being a band, they're a hip hop band, so why not have them act and behave like other bands? If you go on the Wikipedia page, they have that same chart that a lot of these big bands have, where it's like the color coding, like who was in it for what year, and like the line. You don't see that with hip hop artists ever because they're not bands, but the Roots have that because they're a band. Like, it's really interesting. I don't know.
It is, man, and I believe the reason they're so rare is because, let's be honest about what was the driving force for the invention of hip hop. I think it was desperation, right? It was you remove teaching music to impoverished areas of America, right? Music class didn't exist. The money to go buy an instrument didn't really exist, right? So like people had to take what they had, take what was in their living room, a record player, and learn how to make their own music out of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That desperation was the spawn of hip hop,
and that's, I mean, I'll go
and
go.
But sorry, so like what makes the Roots so rare is also it's not. Most people getting into hip hop don't have access to a band, and most people who want to be hip hop artists don't want to be the bassist in a hip hop band. Right. They want to be a rapper or a DJ.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So you're not gonna get this collective experience. They exist. Don't get me wrong. I know that Black Milk toured with a live band, and all of a lot of his even sampled music has a live drummer making the drums, which is so cool. It's not an exclusive experience that the Roots.
It's rare.
But they're the best at it, and it's very rare.
Just to piggyback what you're saying about the ours is a hip hop being desperation. It's honestly, it's not even hip hop. It's much deeper than that. It's like the history of like music and black people in this country. I mean, it started with even to go dark. It started in the slave times where these guys had, like, you want to talk about desperate? You want to talk about desperate? Those motherfuckers were desperate. And they were making music from whatever whatever they could, like wherever they were, whether they're in the yard, whether they're their quarters. I mean, this is really obviously really really dark times, and all these people try to do was make the best of it with what they had. So that was back then. That was hundreds of years ago, and like we talked about before, especially like when we were talking about the allegory, how a lot of things haven't really changed. That's one aspect that hip hop was born from, that same kind of mentality. Obviously not the same exact way, but that same mentality of like, I'm not getting the resources I need to be like to make the same things that you make, so I'm gonna make shit on my own. Like I don't have a guitar. I got a bucket and a stick. I don't got a piano. I got a record player that I'm gonna invent. I'm gonna make a whole new instrument.
Yep.
Out of what essentially was just a form of playing music, and I am now going to make that a brand new instrument because this is where you've left me. And you know what? We made some beautiful music ever since, for like 40 plus years in the game, and we're still here. So it's 100%. But going back to that, not everyone has the resources like that, but the Roots did, and look what they did. Look what they did by blending in that pure hip hop, sort of musicality, that thought, and added live instruments and live composition and everything. It's just beautiful. It's great.
And my final statement I'm gonna say in reverence, I guess, to this group is, and then I'll let you guys take it out. So my final take: excellent album, fucking so good. I hope if you got all the way to the end of this show, chances are you heard it already. If not, put it on. It's worth it. I just want to say, someone as talented as Black Thought, someone as incredible and lyrical and the perfect mixture of G-Rap, Big Daddy Kane, and Rakim to make your own sound. I would say that's Black Thought, right? Mm-hmm. G-Rap, Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, plus massive creativity in your own invention, and there you have it. Someone as good as him, he could have went solo at any time and had a successful career, in my opinion. Right? He could have said, you know what? This was fun, guys. I'm going to go do my own thing now and be Black Thought. It took him decades to be Black Thought. You know what I mean? And still have his group, the Roots, they're still together. Mm-hmm. But it took decades to get solo releases from him. And I just think it goes back to that word, that rare quality that so many humans lack, humility. It's such a beautiful thing. The betterment of the group before the betterment of your own career. And, it takes a lot to be that good and still want to be a part of a group and not your own act.
And seems to be happy with it. They don't. I mean, as we always say,
true partnership.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know these people. We don't. Right. We don't know what their actual inner relationships are. But from the looks of it, from what I could tell, at least for Black Thought and Questlove, they seem to be truly boys, and that's part of it's like us. The reason why I feel like our chemistry on this even podcast is so good is because we are boys and we have we have that chemistry already built in. I feel like it's the same thing with them, and it's very obvious, and that's part of why the music is so good. It's so fucking good because these guys are just simpatico.
And the last thing I'll say is Malik B, rejoice in paradise. You will be missed. R.I.P.
Word.
Dion. Your final thoughts?
Yeah, so I'll give mine. Then Gary has his pick for next week, so Gary can end it off. But yeah, I mean we've said it all. It's a concept album, but it's so much more than that. I think it's kind of revolutionary, and not as an album as a whole, but more so just what the Roots do in general. And this is just sort of another example of them revolutionizing something that they've already sort of changed years ago. Mm-hmm. It's really, really interesting. And that's why it's such a great album, because you're not used to hearing this in hip hop. You're also, again, not used to hearing this with the Roots. Even for a group that is so different, this is different for them. And they executed it great. We talked about the main theme, obvious, it's a backward story, and it's only obvious because that's what we know it to be. It's a backward story about a guy named Redford who is a down and out, essentially thug person of color, who's had to turn to crime and eventually dies. I think that the album also kind of has a more macro meaning to it, and it goes to sort of the Black diaspora in this country, we just talked about the desperation. Redford, got to a point in his life where he was desperate enough that he had to, turn to crime, and it ended up costing him his life. That's true of a lot of people in the inner city. It's very sad. We've talked about it before in past albums, on Late Registration a little bit, on Allegory certainly. But I think that is an overall sort of macro theme to this. It's it's the sad reality of what it's like to be Black in the inner city in this country. And particularly in the song Lighthouse, which I thought was probably might be my favorite song on the album. It has a theme of water, and water being the thing that's weighing you down, weighing Redford down, but also weighing down people as a whole. And water, it's interesting because water has been kind of a root issue in Black oppression in this country for a long time. Yeah. You could go to a lot of different examples. It still is. I mean, the what happened in Katrina. With the waters rising and government not
Flint,
doing anything. Again, that Flint was going to be my next thing. I said Flint, Michigan, which is still a problem to this day. And you can even go as far back, honestly, and this isn't a stretch, as slavery. How did slaves come over? On ships, on water. The water has been a problem and has been sort of a root. I'm not saying, we got to ban water. Big water is out to get us. No, I'm not saying that, obviously. What I am saying though is
stop drinking water.
Stop drinking that shit, yo. No, but what I'm saying is that the song Lighthouse is interesting because the chorus is, and no one's in the lighthouse, you're face down in the ocean. In other words, you're drowning, you're surrounded by the shit that's been killing you for a while. Yeah, it's a source of life for most people and for you too, but it could also be a source of death just as easily. And right now, there's no one in the lighthouse. There's no one who gives a shit about you right now. So you're gonna drown. You're gonna drown alone, and sorry, that's just what we signed up for.
Just so we're clear, the guy in the lighthouse doesn't give a shit about people.
Even if there was a guy in the lighthouse, he doesn't give a shit. But right now there isn't one. Yeah, Gary, you're right. I mean, that's
just sidebar.
So I went a little deep there. Who knows though? I could be wrong, could be right, but that's how I looked at it.
I love that.
Just overall, again, just my closing thoughts. This album was just great. It was beautiful. It was a work of art.
Excellent pick.
The overture, I guess what we're calling it, at the end, the Redford Suite was just beautiful music at its core. Again, like it almost made me tear up listening to it after listening to the rest of the album, and then having that being the end. It like the musical tones just sort of brought that emotion out. But yeah, great album. I'm glad I picked it. Glad you guys enjoyed it. Listen to more Roots, and again, if you like this album, you should definitely listen to And Then Shoot Your Cousin, which was their next track or next album. And Ben, you're right, it was their last studio album as a group. And rest in peace, Malik B.
Yeah, man.
Wow, I have a theory for why they chose to put the album out backwards.
Let's hear it.
All right, so. The songs in the beginning of the album, the first couple of songs on the album, are the most very easy to listen to and expected hip hop songs on the album. Okay. They're awesome hip hop songs. They're like, I started making my list of dope songs, and it was like one after another from the start. And then
I felt the same way, Gary.
As it gets to the middle, it starts to transition into more experimental stuff. And I think if they started that way, people who are expecting hip-hop would be like, what the hell is this? Yeah. And probably wouldn't give it as much of a chance as they would otherwise if they start with the really dope stuff.
That's interesting.
That song, Make My, I don't know who Big Crit is. I've never heard of Big Crit, but I'm going to be listening to some Big Crit. That is awesome. Really, really good lyrics. Just emotionally affecting lyrics, the finer things, ocean fronts, rolling blunts with model chick and eating lobster and steak. It's like,
yeah, man.
Yo, he's great. He shouted out Wu-Tang too. They're hollering cashews, everything. Just call it cream, because when it rises to the top, you get the finer things. Like, yo, you just took a concept that we hip hop heads have lauded over, cream for years, like a Wu-Tang concept, and you just added something that we haven't even thought about. It's like, oh shit, yeah, cream rises to the top. Holy shit, yeah, Big Crit is great.
It was very easy for somebody with my level of knowledge of hip hop, which is I'd say intermediate, to just nod my head and jam to it and think, wow, these lyrics are amazing. He talks, it was really sad too, just in that first verse, my heart's so heavy that the ropes that hold my casket break. That's rough, and that is really strong imagery.
And it's an otherwise sort of positive, not uplifting kind of verse. And
the tonality,
yeah. But then he jabs you with the casket line, and then later on he has the line about something about, if I don't make the green, I go crazy. I forget what it was, but these little jabs, we're good, but there's some fucked up shit going on behind the scenes. I may be about to die. Maybe this is my positive flashback in my life. Which
it's that era of Redford where, I don't know if it was this song or not, but talking about spending money like it's counterfeit, or spending time like it's counterfeit. That speaks to this part of being like a briefly successful criminal, right? Made it through the struggle to the other side of it, but knowing that it's really waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Just living super fast. That came across. I thought it was such a cool album, I think, because of that. At first, those couple of tracks immediately blew my mind, and then the rest of it, opened me up to the rest of it, which is a little bit harder if you're expecting something, because you're getting something different at the end. You're getting, overture, which was wild. So for next week, I wanted to pick a Redman album, because I love Redman, but the Redman albums that I've listened to, I've played them out even for myself. I've listened to them so much. I'm like, oh my god, this is good. But I could utter this entire album, right? So anyway, I looked at the list, because you guys have good creative suggestions, and your music knowledge is deeper than mine. So Dion, I'm stealing one of yours.
Go for it, please.
Down the list, it's There Is a Dark Side.
I was hoping that's what you were going to pick. Gary, as soon as you said Redman just now, I was hoping you were going to pick There Is a Dark Side. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Yo,
The
I'm sorry.
greatest ever.
Let me say, I have no idea what the hell is on this album.
Oh,
This
never
is his
listened to
weird.
it,
This is his weirdest album
it's
by far.
so good though.
but it's
great.
from my favorite era of Redman, and
Yep.
I'm so psyched, and it'll be
thank
fresh
you.
to me. Thank you, Dion, for throwing that
Yes.
suggestion in there.
Please, yeah.
So good, man. Awesome. All right, guys. So you heard it. You heard it here first. Next week's episode is gonna be "There Is a Dark Side" by Redman. Give it a listen. Give it a spin. Give it a few spins if you want. Check back in with us, and we'll talk all about it. You've been listening to Do It Yourself Music Appreciation. We want to give a big shout out to our man Red Walrus. Those ill beats you hear, in our interludes, intros, and outros. Excellent production. You can check him out on Bandcamp, download his music, support great independent art. And we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.